shelter workshops. But as a wonderful, it is a wonderful idea. It is a wonderful instrument of policy to integrate these people through them. But normally, they should function mainly as a transition period in which people with disabilities could enter into the labor market, learn how to stay, how to behave on the labor market, and then to make the transition to the normal market. That's why the title of my presentation is If the Protected Shelters is a Solution for the Employment of People for Disabilities, or should be only solution for the transition, for their transition to the labor market. But I will explain what we have in Romania and what we discover when we did our research for on these topics. And at the end, I think Mariano can share with you also our. We have an article in 2021 about the policy related to these protected shelters in Romania. Let's see. Okay. So first of all, what is a protected shelter workshop? Is an economic unit primarily established with the objective of employing persons with disabilities. So normally, why I said that it's an economic unit, because they produce goods or services and sell them to the market. Normally, their purpose is to offer jobs with adapted conditions to people with disabilities. What means adapted conditions? Means that the working conditions should be tailored to the work capacity, to the health status, and specific needs of people with disabilities. Their role is to facilitate this vocational rehabilitation and social integration through work for people with disabilities, no matter if the people with disabilities are young or more than 30 years old. Okay. As legal framework, in Romania, we have the legislation regarding the protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities. It's a general law that establishes that each employer with more than 15 employees should have at least 4% of them people with disabilities. If they don't have this percent of people with disabilities, they should pay a disability tax to the state, or they could buy goods or services from units that employ this type of people, these protected shelter workshops. So it's like an obligation for companies either to hire these persons with disabilities, or to buy products from units that employ these people. If you want to have this protected shelter workshop, you should register to the National Agency for People with Disabilities in Romania. So it's a procedure, and you should receive this legal status of protected shelter workshop. It is mandatory that 30% of the people that are employed in these protected shelter unit workshops to be people with disabilities. But the legislation doesn't specify if you should employ people with severe disabilities, or could be medium or low disability, because we have three grades of disabilities, three levels of disabilities in Romania. That's why we can find that in most of them there are a lot of people not with severe disabilities, but mainly with low disability, so the first grade of disability. What are their objectives? First of all, is this objective of professional integration. Their fundamental goal is to integrate people with disabilities into the labor market, then to provide adapted employment, to ensure a secure and stable work environment that provide adapted tasks to individual capacities, and then to make this transition to the normal labor market. Uh, what I put here is that ideally, protected shelter workshops should function as a transition center that prepare people with disabilities for open employment in a competitive labor market. And that's why, for example, they should not only provide a workplace, but also they should provide support services for them. But we will discuss a little bit about this. As main activities, they should focus more on ensuring a supportive and physically functionally adapted work environment for people with disabilities. They should provide these support services, means these are auxiliary and individualized support services for employees with disabilities, that could consist in specific training, personal assistance, or a specific therapy for them. And also, in many cases, these support services means also counseling, individual counseling for social or psychological counseling. And also, their activities should supposed to organize work into a simple and repetitive tasks that can be managed by people with disabilities. Um, of course, they have this function to produce goods or services and sell this production to the market in order to ensure their self-sustainability. They have this facility, let's say fiscal facility, because their main market activity is driven by company that buy products from them instead of paying this disability tax to the state. We call this mechanism the quota mechanism because means that you should have this 4% of your employees to be people with disabilities, and if you don't, this money that you should pay for their salaries could be used to buy services or goods from protected shelters. Many of them use a lot this quota purchase driver because we have this facility also in the legislation for public procurement. I think all the European countries have this facility, this specific contracts in their legislation because we call reserved contracts in the public procurement legislation. And also, they have this economic priority risk. It is a pressure on them to generate revenue for self-sustainability and for survival. And this part with this pressure often forces protected shelter workshops to shift their focus from social objectives, which means this part of optimal integration of people with disabilities in the labor market or the transition to the normal labor market towards strict market demands. So they are more focused on cost efficiency, on mass production, instead of offering this support to people with disabilities to integrate into the labor market. I put here some numbers because, at the end I'm sociologist and I look at the numbers. And for us was important to see if these type of protected shelters are really a good instrument, let's say, for social integration of people with disabilities. And as you can see from 2008, when these protected shelters appeared, they appeared not after the law that we have for people with disabilities. We have this type of entities before, because we had them also in the communist period. But in the communist period, we called them workers cooperatives. So we have workers cooperative for people with disabilities integration, and we have this type of companies, let's say. After the communist period, we have a period in which we recognize or not recognize them as specific units for people with disabilities. But after we have the law, we observe an increase in their numbers. And as you can see, from 2008 until 2017, we have more than three times an increase in their numbers, from 200 to 700. Then in 2019, we have our government considered that there are a lot of problems with them, and not all of them produce the goods and the services through the work of people with disabilities. Many of them do this part, um, make intermediary jobs, so took products from China, for example, and sell in Romania and say that these products are from this type of units. And the government decided to cut the quota system, cut this facility. That's why in 2020 we observed that we have only 27 protected units in Romania. After a lot of discussions and a lot of pressure from the civil society, the government in 2021 decided to reintroduce this fiscal facility, and to introduce these reserve contracts for these protected units, and their numbers started to increase. Now we have, but in the legislation there are interdiction that is related to these intermediary jobs, so they cannot take products from other units and only sell. They should produce, so they put more focus on this part of really product these goods or services through the work of people with disabilities. What we observe was that normally we have an decrease in the number of employees of these protected shelter workshops from 2015 to 2017 to 2019, when we have this um, legal provision that cut the fiscal facility. In 2023, there are 2,500 employees in these protected shelter units, out of which 1,600 are people with disabilities. These numbers are slightly increased in 2024. And now we have 2,000, almost 2,700 employees, and out of them 1,800 were people with disabilities. Also, we observed that the percent of people with disabilities that are employed are more than 30% that the legislation consider as mandatory to give you this accreditation as a protected unit. Okay, what in our research, what we observed as main implementation issue, this quota penalty problem, because even if we consider that the company normally, in a normal economy, the company would not prefer to pay the tax to this employment tax, disability tax to the state, that and they will prefer to pay the to buy products from other companies. In Romania, many companies, many, which means more than half of them, prefer to pay this penalty, so to pay this disability tax to the state rather than employ people with disability or purchase products from protected shelter units. Um, our problem is not that they pay this tax to the state. Our problem is that they don't prefer to hire people with disabilities. So if they have 50 employees, they should have this means two people with disabilities to be hired, but they prefer not to hire this type of people. And also they prefer to give to the state because it's more simple instead of buying products from these protected shelter units. And for us, this was an issue, and we had a lot of advocacy campaign for companies in order to make advocacy and awareness campaign, because we cannot make advocacy, we cannot change the law, but mainly to make more the company is more sensitive to the problem of people with disability, and to explain that they can hire this type of people, or it's better to purchase these products from protected shelter units instead of paying this tax to the state, because even if the state promise through all these years that they will make a lot of programs for people with disabilities from this tax, we cannot see any program for them. So it's we give this money to the state budget and that's it. We don't know what they do with this money. Also, is this market limitation, this preference of the companies, limits the sales market and reduces the employment opportunities offered to people with disabilities. We know that the companies do not prefer to hire people with disabilities because they are afraid that they cannot provide adapted work environment, and also they have this let's say perception that people with disabilities are not um, they don't work as normal ones. They need more support. They need people that they work in a easy way, let's say, not so fast and so on. So they don't want to this type of people because of these perceptions. And is a misperception, but doesn't matter. And also, we have a lot of administrative capacity problems to implement this policy for people with disabilities. We don't have an efficient monitoring system to see exactly if for example, the companies really employ people with disabilities, but not only low disability, but to have also moderate or severe disability if they can work. We don't have this monitoring system in order to see if the protected shelter workshops do not intermediate goods or services and so on. So there are a lot of this type of problems. And also, the companies consider that they don't have fiscal facilities or other support services from the public employment services for people with disabilities. Even if in the legislation we can have subsidies for employers that hire people with disabilities. And because our discussion is not only on what these protected shelter units do, but it's about the transition or permanence of people with disabilities in this type of units. We can say that one of the major risks is that protected shelter workshops become a permanent employment destination for people with disabilities rather than a transition period for them to the labor market. So, if we consider this part of their scope, we can say that only few people with disabilities make the transition to the normal labor market from these protected shelter units. And this is one of, let's say, the main challenge for this type of units, really to make these people with disabilities consider that they are prepared for the normal labor market and that they could face the requirements of a normal job. Then we have this lack of vocational diversity. If we look at what kind of products or services these protected shelter units do, we observe that it's a limited range of products of services. So the vocational opportunity are not so diverse for people with disabilities. So they focus on few products there, so their abilities and competencies are not so high. And also, what we look was if the policy, our public policy, support this part of transition to the normal labor market for people with disabilities that are employed in these protected shelter units. And the problem is that we don't have this evidence. Normally, I think 3 or 4 years ago, our national agency stopped to give us numbers about the people with disabilities that are employed in Romania. Even if we ask a lot about this data, they give us this data only upon a specific request. They don't publish this data related to people with disabilities that are employed in the normal labor market, not in protected shelter units, because they provide this type of data, but the others no. So I think that what we observe is this need for evidence. So the success of protected shelter units, protected shelter workshops requires better integration into national disability employment policy informed by data. So we should have this data in order to have better policies and to understand how we can reform this policy related to protected shelter units, or how we can reform the legislation related to reserve contracts. What we need to measure is not only economic survival, but also we should have some data about the social progress of employees, especially employees with disabilities. So we should see if they develop new skills, new competencies, what are the transition rates to the open labor market, and so on. So Mm, I think that our legislation in legal framework in this moment should focus more on encouraging this inclusion and transition to the normal labor market instead of giving fiscal facilities for this type of units. So, from our perspective, this should be the focus on of these protected units, not to have to benefit from this fiscal facility with that company could buy products from them instead of paying disability tax. We cannot say that these protected shelter workshops are not viable and not a necessary mechanism for labor market integration of people with disabilities, because really in some of them we have a lot of people with severe disabilities that are integrated, people with autism, people with uh, Down syndrome or other type of mental disabilities, not only physical disabilities, so are mental disabilities, and they succeed to integrate them. Of course, for this type of people, will be very challenging to make their transition to the labor market. So I think in this case could be not a transition period, but a permanent period to integrate them into the labor market. And also, the current policy design often leads protected shelters to function as a permanent subsidized employment solution rather than an effective transition centers to the open labor market. It is in some cases, and if I consider, we have one protected unit that are managed by a public authority, is the biggest protected shelter in Romania. They have 80 employees, people with disabilities. So they have 90 employees, out of them 80 are people with disabilities, almost 90%, I think. And they provide 8 workshops for people with disabilities. First, when they start their activity, they said to the city hall that instead of paying this disability tax to the state budget, to give this disability tax to make a protected unit that hire people with disability that are in the social services from the city hall. And after 2 years, they become almost self-sustainable, so they don't need any money from the city hall from this disability tax for them, because they succeeded from the revenues that they have from economic activity, from the income, to be self-sustainable. I will give you the link to them, because they are a successful story. But not only them, we have a lot of other protected units, for example, in recycle economy, in green energy, and also in other areas that we consider that, oh, wow, it's impossible, almost impossible to have this type of unit. Um, some conclusions is that we still have this policy ambiguity. This reliance on quota system often leads to compliance without a genuine inclusion. Companies prefer to pay the penalty instead of hire people with disability or to buy these products. Then we have this economic pressure on protected shelter units. They struggle for economic survival. And of course, this means that they have to focus more on production instead of looking on complex social objectives of vocational training or rehabilitation of these people. And we have this part of lack of evidence-based policy because we don't have the capacity to look on other data instead of how many people with disability you have employed, how many contracts you have, how much money you win from this contract. Because in the last year I saw that they introduced this indicator because we ask a lot of times how many reserve contracts these protected shelter units have, what is the value of these contracts, and so on. From 2024, they provide this type of data publicly, so these are publicly. What we recommend, of course, we recommend this policy reform that incentivize the transition function of these protected shelter units, not their economic survival, let's say. Then we should have this part of monitoring and evaluation system that gather evidence on people with disabilities that are employed social progress in order to see if really we have to make some policy changes, but based on data. Otherwise, it's not, we can do what we do in 2019 and stop this facility and stop almost the integration into the labor market, even if was in protected shelter for people with disabilities. Because in that moment we discovered that we have no data about the employment of people with disability. We discovered that most of the protected shelter units disappeared, and people with disabilities had no other jobs on market. And also I think we should incentivize more the social impact and the real inclusion instead of this quota compliance. Yes, you have people with disability, 4% of your employees, yes or no, or you can buy products, yes or no, and so on. These reserved contracts are not an option that companies prefer to use in Romania because they are afraid that the fiscal authorities consider that is not mandatory, and sometimes they discover that the fiscal authorities ask them to not to buy products from this using these reserved contracts because they need money to the budget. And I think that's it. Thank you. And now we can start to discuss, I think.
Thank you so much, Claudia. So it's so interesting, these kind of projects from the government. So it's also for us, for our project, it's important to know how is the environmental policy to build this job crafting model. So for example, in Romania, we can have also this combination of the support of the governance and the job crafting. So it's very interesting to see how we can complement this kind of projects. We have a couple questions. So Agnieszka asks about if you have data on which industries are represented by shelter workplaces in Romania. So you have
Yes,
some data.
we have data. The last reports on protected shelters is an Excel database in which we can find for each protected shelter what are the products that they do, and of course we can find the industry, but you should. When you want to analyze the data, you should recode the data again in order to be able to see. But yes, we have this type of data. Of course, we have these industries from textile industry, a lot of textile industry. We have recycle economy. a lot of them are in this part, but also there are a lot of protected shelters that work in production of, they make a lot of things from iron or something like this. So it's a very diverse area of industries in which they operate.
But I see most of them are manufacture or more
Yes, yes,
not
manufacturing.
technological, not high technical industries, no?
Only few of them are
Mhm.
in techno. We have some of them in IT, for
Mhm.
example, in and we have this part of green energy, green technologies, and so on. Yes, we start to develop this part, but it's not so not so many.
Okay. Okay, Mesaut asks about how to create and manage these shelters. So there's a mechanism or
Yes, normally they should be created like a normal company at the beginning, and then they should require and obtain the certificate as that they work as protected shelter. But the requirements to obtain this status are not so high. They should have 30% of people, of their employees, people with disabilities. And now we introduce another requirement that 30% of their working hours per all the company should be done by people with disabilities. So, but I don't know how they measure this. So until now, they have only this part. 30% should be people with disabilities of their employees.
okay, great. We have another questions about Katarzyna about the skills. Do you think are more important for this employment?
I think this is a long discussion because depends on the type of disability that these people have. Um, if I consider that the people with the mental disabilities, because we have protected shelters that have employees, people with mental disabilities, sometimes severe mental disabilities. For them, they consider that they will not be able to enter in the normal labor market. Even if we have some cases, for example, of people with autism or Down syndrome or something like this that were hired by big retailers in Romania for doing these repetitive jobs in their warehousing. So to put products, to put some labels on the products and so on. So this type of jobs, but nothing more. If we consider that most of the people that are people with disabilities that are employed in these protected shelters are people with low disability. This means physical disability, but not a disability that cannot allow them to work. I think that they need not mainly skills, but they need some small adaptation of the working place. As skills, sometimes they need this part of going to the job at a specific hour. I don't know. We can consider that are soft skills, what we call soft skills, not specific skills, because they this part of specific skills normally they will get on directly on the workplace. But sometimes they miss these soft skills mainly.
Okay. I think Katarzyna asks about this because in our project for the job crafting, the work with these young people is about to adapt the people with some skills, and also the employee to match the young people with disabilities. So I think Katarzyna is about to ask about this kind of skill.
You
Maybe
know,
if you, yeah.
sometimes, Mariano, uh, when we have these cooperatives for people with disabilities, we still have some of them, these workers' cooperatives for people with disabilities. And for a long time, these type of cooperatives represent not only a workplace for them, but also school, if you want, a vocational school for them, because it was the place in which young people with disabilities can make their practical activities also from that they have in the vocational schools, because in the vocational schools we most of the practical activities are not done because they don't have workshops well prepared or something like this. So depends, but mostly soft skills are required, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
How we
Yes.
can incentivize the
Yeah.
transition function? This is a good question because it is not so easy, but I think that this should be let's say, the main goal of our policy. At the end, if we look at the social impact of these protected units, we cannot say that they really have social impact because they do not make their scope to make the transition to the labor market for this type of people. How we can incentivize? I think we can have, I don't know, programs for 1 or 2 years to support them more, to support with social services or with other type of services that can make them trust more in their that they can do a normal job. They can go to the job as others and so on. So maybe we can have these type of programs and to give some subsidies for the employers to provide these social services. Now we don't have these subsidies for social or support services for this type of people.
So maybe to
Mm.
complement this policy of shelters, this should be something with
Yes, we tried because we have some national programs from the Public Employment Service that they propose each year to hire people with disabilities, but they don't specify if they want to hire these people with disabilities on normal market or in these protected shelters. So at the end, they count all the people that are new employees in these protected shelter workshops as their results of these programs, but it's not the result of their program because these people with disabilities should be in the normal labor market mainly at the end. So I think maybe they should look how many people from protected shelters, people with disabilities, make the transition to the labor market. This is the real impact that we want to observe at the end. I saw how I assess the competence of a person with a disability for a specific job. I don't assess this type of competence because I'm not the person that can do this. I discuss with I ask people that have this type of protected units how they make the assessment of the competencies at the beginning when they hire these people with disabilities. And I don't know in all the cases, but I saw in a lot of cases that they use a lot of techniques, at least for these manual activities, they have a lot of instruments to measure their competencies. But I don't know otherwise how they do.
We have another question. Uh, okay, so is this the model of employment person with disability in the open labor market promoted as incentively in Romania as in Poland? So
No, no, we don't. We don't have this focus in Romania to hire people with disabilities.
oh,
We consider that um, they are not an asset for companies. The most of the employers consider that this type of people are not an asset for them. They should hire normal people. They prefer to hire to bring people from Nepal, Bangladesh, and other countries instead of working with the vulnerable people or people with disabilities, and to help them to integrate on the labor market. This is the we saw that more and more employers ask the government to give them the permission to bring more people from abroad in Romania to work, but we have no focus on vulnerable groups or people with disabilities to make them more prepared for the labor market.
mm.
No, well, I don't think we have this focus.
Yeah, maybe it's a mental change, no, to understand how important it is to integrate in the labor market, no?
They consider that the effort is too high, and because they don't have any fiscal facility or incentive from the government to do this, they consider that it's a loss for their profit, so they prefer not to do this.
Mm. Yeah, I
Okay,
see.
if we discuss about the penalties,
Mhm.
the penalty means that you should pay to the state. The tax of the disability tax means one minimum salary in Romania to pay to the state. So if you have 50 employees, this means that you should have to pay this minimum salary monthly because you have monthly to pay. I don't know. The minimum salary is not net. The gross one is around 4.000 means I think around 800 euros, so gross salary. So they have to pay for 3 or 4 people this tax to the state, and for them it's okay. And there are not so many companies with more than 50 employees. So we have many of them are less than 50 employees, and they keep like this. They prefer to make another company to hire other people because they know that if they have more than 50 employees, they have other requirements from the state. So they will keep the company with the 49 employees, not to have this requirement of hiring people with disabilities.
Yes, I think it's common in all the countries. So to
And
not to,
we have a lot of protected shelters that, yes, still they are some opportunistic companies that they saw that they can use this fiscal facility and they can use this part with reserve contracts, and they say, okay, we hire people with disability, so give us buy products from us, and you will use this facility, and it's better for you and for us. And we have a lot of the civil society in Romania have a lot of awareness campaigns in order to penalize this type of opportunistic behaviors, because we saw what was happening when the state cut this facility and was not so good for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
At the end, was like, the state penalize not the companies and not this opportunistic behavior of the employers. They penalize at the end people with disabilities, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because you don't have this monitoring mechanism to see which of the protected shelters make this intermediate work to buy products from another part and to sell, only to sell. No, the state don't want to look at this. They prefer to cut the facility for all, which means a lot of lost in the jobs of people with disabilities.
Yeah. So it's a pity, yeah, finally. Okay, so we are arriving to the end of our webinar. So just to thank you again to Claudia about this kind of policies in Romania. I think it's interesting to know which is moving around the world, and to complement our project. And if you want to know more about our project, you can visit our website, and also this webinar will be uploading in the next day, so you can revisit the project. Thank you again, Claudia.
Thank you too.
And for the rest of attendance, we can see you again in our next webinar, probably in March, April next year. So have a good end of the year and good holidays. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye bye.